People think betrayal comes from strangers. They're wrong. The deepest betrayals come from people who know exactly where to hurt you, because they helped raise you. My name is Elena Carter, and this is not a story I ever wanted to tell. But silence protected the wrong people for too long. If you're listening to this, I want you to know something from the beginning. I didn't start out angry. I didn't start out bitter. I started out as a sister who trusted too much. I grew up in a quiet suburb in Aurora, Colorado, in a 2-story house with white siding and a backyard that my mother tried desperately to keep green. From the outside, we looked like a normal American family. Holidays together, photos on the wall, neighbors who waved politely. Inside that house, though, there was an unspoken order. At the top of that order was my older brother, Ethan Carter. Ethan was only 2 years older than me, but the difference between us felt like a lifetime. From the moment I learned to walk, I learned something else too. He mattered more. When Ethan made mistakes, they were laughed off. When I made them, they were remembered. When Ethan spoke loudly, he was confident. When I spoke quietly, I was weak. Still, I loved him. That's the part that hurts the most to admit. When we were kids, Ethan was my protector. He taught me how to ride a bike and ran behind me until I stopped wobbling. He scared off the neighborhood boys when they teased me for being shy. Once, when a boy at school called me strange, Ethan punched him so hard he got suspended for 3 days. I remember him standing in front of me, chest out, saying, "No one messes with my sister." I believed him. As we grew older, the house changed. Or maybe I just started noticing things I was too young to understand before. Ethan struggled in school, but no one worried. "He's a man," my father would say. "He'll figure it out." When I brought home straight A's, the praise was quiet and short-lived, like my success made people uncomfortable. By high school, teachers started talking about my future like it was something big. Scholarships, debate competitions, Ivy League schools. I could feel something shift every time those words were spoken at dinner. The room would grow tense. My father would clear his throat. My mother would smile too tightly. Ethan would stop eating and stare at his plate. I didn't realize then that my ambition felt like a threat. The acceptance letter came during my senior year. Columbia University, full scholarship. I remember holding that envelope with shaking hands, rereading it again and again just to make sure it was real. This wasn't just college. It was freedom. It was proof that I could build something of my own. That night, I put the letter on the kitchen table. My father read it slowly, then folded it back into the envelope. My mother said she was proud, but her voice lacked conviction. Ethan didn't say a word. Later, I overheard them talking. I wasn't trying to listen. I just happened to be walking past the kitchen. "She'll leave," my father said. "She'll forget where she came from," my mother replied. Ethan laughed quietly. "She already thinks she's better than us." That was the first time it hit me. My dreams scared them. They didn't forbid me from going. That would have caused too many questions. Instead, they convinced me to wait. "1 year," my mother said. "Family needs you close." Ethan agreed. He told me I would change if I left too soon. That word again, change, like it was something dangerous. I stayed. That decision cost me years of my life. I enrolled in a local college instead and worked 2 jobs to cover my expenses. When my father lost work, I helped with the mortgage. When bills piled up, I paid them without complaint. I told myself that family meant sacrifice. Ethan, meanwhile, drifted. He switched majors. He partied. He blamed professors, bad luck, the system, everyone except himself. Still, he was treated like the future of the family. When he failed, it was temporary. When I succeeded, it was expected. The resentment didn't arrive suddenly. It grew quietly, like mold in the walls. Everything changed when Ethan met Melissa. Melissa was polished, sharp, and ambitious. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. She saw things before others did, and she saw me immediately. She smiled when we met, but it never reached her eyes. "You're very observant," she said once, watching me carefully. It didn't feel like a compliment. After they got married, the house no longer felt like home. Decisions were made without me. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. I became a guest in the place I helped keep alive. One evening, Ethan brought home some paperwork. "Just refinancing documents," he said casually. "Since you help with payments, it's easier if everything's organized." I didn't question him. I trusted him. I signed. I didn't know that my signature had legally erased my claim to the house. I didn't know until months later when Melissa sat me down and smiled like she was doing me a favor. "You should start looking for your own place," she said. "We need privacy now." I looked at my parents. They didn't look back. Ethan couldn't meet my eyes. That night, I packed my life into 2 suitcases. I left behind furniture I paid for, memories I carried, and a family that no longer wanted me. I slept in my car, parked on a quiet street, my phone battery dying beside me. I cried until my chest hurt. But somewhere between exhaustion and heartbreak, something inside me hardened. I stopped seeing Ethan as my brother. I started seeing him as my mistake. And sitting alone in that car, I made myself a promise. One I would keep no matter how long it took. I would never be powerless again. I wish I could say I stood up from that car stronger the next morning. I didn't. I woke up stiff, cold, and ashamed. My neck twisted at an angle no human body should sleep in. The sun was already high, and people were walking their dogs past my car. Normal lives happening inches away from my quiet collapse. I checked my phone. 3% battery. No missed calls. That was when the truth finally settled in. I was homeless in my own country, abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect me. I spent the first few days pretending this was temporary. I told myself I was just between places. I showered at a cheap gym, ate granola bars, and applied for apartments I couldn't afford. I smiled during interviews like nothing was wrong, even when my stomach growled loud enough for people to hear. But pretending doesn't change reality. By the end of the week, my bank account was almost empty. I had paid bills for years and saved nothing for myself because I believed family would never let me fall. That belief died fast. The first real humiliation came at a cafe downtown. I ordered the cheapest coffee and sat there for hours, charging my phone, applying for jobs. A manager finally approached me and asked me to leave if I wasn't buying anything else. His voice wasn't cruel, just tired. That somehow hurt more. I packed up my things and walked out with my head down, my cheeks burning. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. America is kind when you're doing well, invisible when you're not. I called Ethan once. Just once. He didn't answer. I didn't leave a voicemail. I didn't beg. Pride was the last thing I had left, and I wasn't ready to give that up too. Days blurred together. I learned which parking lots were safest to sleep in, which restrooms stayed open overnight, which places let you sit without asking questions. I learned how quiet hunger can be. I learned how heavy silence feels when no one cares where you are. One afternoon, I ran into an old college acquaintance at a grocery store. She recognized me immediately. "Elena? Oh my God, it's been years." She looked at my clothes, my tired face, my cart with nothing but instant noodles. Her smile faded. "What are you doing these days?" she asked. I lied without thinking. "Consulting," I said. She nodded, relieved. We both were. People don't want the truth. They want comfort. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I was poor, not because I was tired, but because I had become someone who had to lie to survive. The breaking point came when my car was towed. I had parked overnight in the wrong area. One mistake. That's all it took. I stood on the sidewalk watching them tow away the only shelter I had left. My clothes, my documents, my laptop, everything, disappeared behind a metal gate. I sat on the curb and laughed. It was either laugh or shatter completely. That night, I stayed at a women's shelter for the first time. The air smelled like disinfectant and desperation. The women around me carried stories heavier than mine. Abuse, addiction, loss. No one asked questions. No one judged. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. In the morning, a counselor asked me what I did before all this. "I was good at strategy," I said. She raised an eyebrow. Problem solving. She handed me a flyer for a free certification program in financial compliance and risk analysis. Something about it clicked instantly. Rules, systems, loopholes, power structures. I enrolled that same week. I studied like my life depended on it. Because it did. I learned how banks think, how contracts hide intentions, how legal language can ruin lives or rebuild them. I realized something chilling. What Ethan did to me wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, and calculation could be learned. Within months, I got an entry-level job at a consulting firm. The pay was modest, but it was clean money. Honest money. I rented a tiny room with shared walls and no privacy. And it felt like a palace. I stopped crying. I started observing. I didn't block Ethan on social media. I didn't confront him. I watched quietly. His life was everything I lost. My parents' house, my savings, my place at the table. Melissa posted about investments, about real estate, about building generational wealth. That phrase stuck with me. Generational wealth is just generational theft with better branding. 2 years passed. I earned certifications. I moved firms. I learned how to trace money, uncover fraud, and predict collapses before they happened. I learned patience. One night, while reviewing a client's portfolio, I recognized a familiar structure. The same kind of refinancing. The same legal trick. I froze. Ethan had done more than steal from me. He had been playing a dangerous game with money that wasn't fully his. And suddenly, revenge stopped being emotional. It became strategic. I didn't want to destroy him in a moment of rage. I wanted him to understand loss the way I did. Slowly, legally, undeniably. So I waited. I gathered information the way I once gathered hope. Quietly. Carefully. And as my life stabilized, something else grew stronger inside me. Not anger, not hatred, but clarity. I wasn't doing this because I hated my brother. I was doing this because he thought I was finished. By the time I was ready to step back into Ethan's life, I wasn't the same woman he had forced out of that house with 2 suitcases and a broken heart. I had learned something far more valuable than revenge. Timing. I didn't rush. I never rush anymore. In my line of work, impatience is how people expose themselves. I had moved up quietly at the firm, building a reputation as someone who could untangle problems others avoided. I didn't seek attention. I didn't post achievements online. I let people underestimate me. Meanwhile, I watched Ethan from a distance. His life looked impressive on the surface. He and Melissa had upgraded the house. They hosted dinner parties. They spoke confidently about investments, about risk, about being self-made. My parents appeared in photos, smiling like nothing had ever happened. But I saw the cracks. Ethan had over-leveraged. He chased quick returns. He relied on refinancing and short-term liquidity to maintain an image of stability. He mistook luck for intelligence, the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. And then opportunity arrived in the most ordinary way. A new client walked into our firm with a portfolio that looked familiar. The structure, the debt layering, the shell entities, all of it mirrored what Ethan and Melissa had been doing. I didn't panic. I didn't react. I volunteered to take the case. Over weeks, I confirmed what I already suspected. Ethan wasn't just reckless. He was exposed. One regulatory audit, one market correction, one wrong signature. That was all it would take. But I didn't want coincidence. I wanted control. So I did something very simple. I reintroduced myself. I sent Ethan an email. No accusations, no anger, just a polite message. Hi, Ethan. It's been a long time. I hope you're well. I'll be in Denver next month for work. Would you like to grab coffee? I stared at the screen before sending it. My finger didn't shake. He replied within 10 minutes. Wow. Didn't expect to hear from you. Sure. People always respond when they think they've already won. We met at a cafe downtown. I arrived early, dressed professionally, calmly. When Ethan walked in, I almost laughed. He looked older, tired, less certain. Elena, he said, forcing a smile. Ethan, I replied. We talked about safe things, work, weather, our parents. He avoided the past like it might bite him. Eventually, he asked, So, what do you do now? I smiled. Risk analysis. His eyes lit up. Of course they did. Over the next few weeks, I became useful. I gave advice, general advice. I pointed out trends. I never told him what to do directly. I let him believe every idea was his own. That's how you guide someone without them realizing they're being led. Melissa was cautious at first. She watched me carefully, the way she always had. But results softened suspicion. When Ethan followed my suggestions and saw short-term gains, she relaxed. They started including me in conversations, then meetings, then decisions. I never lied. That's the irony. Everything I said was true, just incomplete. I suggested expanding their portfolio right before interest rates shifted. I encouraged them to move assets in ways that were legal but fragile. I framed risk as opportunity and let their greed do the rest. All the while, I documented everything. Emails, messages, transactions. Not for blackmail, for timing. The day came when I was invited back into the house. My house. I stood in the living room and felt nothing. No nostalgia, no anger, just awareness. I noticed the new furniture, the artwork Melissa had chosen, the framed photo of Ethan shaking hands with someone important. I noticed my parents watching me nervously, unsure which version of me had returned. That night, Melissa pulled me aside. You've changed, she said. So have you, I replied. She smiled thinly. You're doing very well for yourself. That was the moment she realized I was no longer beneath her. From then on, things accelerated. Ethan trusted me completely. He asked me to review documents, to sit in on calls, to advise on restructuring debt. I warned him once. Just once. This is aggressive, I said calmly. If scrutiny comes, it'll come hard. He laughed. They won't look at us. People never think they'll be the example. Behind the scenes, I did something else. I stepped away. I made sure I wasn't legally tied to anything that would fall. I positioned myself where I could watch, not be crushed. And when the audit notice arrived, it didn't come from me. It came from the system. Ethan called me that night, his voice shaking. "They're asking questions," he said. "I know," I replied. For the first time, he sounded afraid. I ended the call and sat in silence. Revenge isn't loud. It's patient. When the collapse finally happened, it didn't arrive with sirens or shouting. It arrived quietly, the way real disasters do, through emails, frozen accounts, and phone calls that stopped being returned. Ethan called me 3 times that morning. I didn't answer. By the afternoon, his name was everywhere he never wanted it to be. Internal reports, legal notices, whispered conversations. Investors started pulling out. Banks stopped smiling. Melissa stopped posting. The house went silent. I watched everything unfold from a distance, sitting in my small apartment with a cup of coffee I didn't rush to drink. There was no thrill, no satisfaction, just a strange calm. This wasn't punishment. This was consequence. Ethan had built his life on shortcuts and entitlement. I had simply removed the illusion that protected him. A week later, he asked to meet. Not at a cafe, not at the house, at a public park. That alone told me how far he had fallen. He looked smaller when I saw him sitting on the bench, hands clasped, shoulders rounded. The confidence he wore like armor for years was gone. "You knew," he said as soon as I sat down. "It wasn't a question. I understood risk," I replied. He laughed bitterly. "You let us walk straight into it." I met his eyes for the first time in years. "No," I said calmly. "I warned you. You just didn't think rules applied to you." He stared at the ground. "They're taking the house," he whispered. My house. I felt something then. Not joy, not pain, but balance. "What about Mom and Dad?" he asked. "They'll be fine," I said. "They always are." He looked up sharply. "You're doing this because of the past, aren't you?" I thought about sleeping in my car, about the shelter, about the silence. "I didn't do this because of the past," I said. "I did this because you never thought I mattered." He tried to argue, to justify, to rewrite history. I didn't let him. For the first time in my life, I didn't adjust my truth to protect his comfort. Melissa never spoke to me again. She blamed Ethan publicly, quietly distancing herself as his world collapsed. Watching her detach was almost poetic. That's how she survived. By letting others fall first. My parents called once. They didn't apologize. They didn't ask forgiveness. They just asked how I was doing, I answered honestly. "I'm fine," I said. And I was. Months passed. The house sold. The money vanished into debts. The family photos disappeared, and something unexpected happened. I felt light. I didn't win anything tangible. I didn't take the house back. I didn't humiliate him publicly. I didn't need to. I reclaimed something far more important. Myself. People ask me now if I regret it. If I wish I had chosen forgiveness instead. Here's the truth. No one likes to admit. Forgiveness without accountability is just permission. I didn't destroy my brother. I stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. There's a difference. Today, I live quietly. I work honestly. I sleep peacefully. I don't watch Ethan anymore. I don't need to. Revenge didn't heal me. Understanding did. And if you're listening to this because you've been betrayed by someone who shares your blood, hear me clearly. You don't need to scream. You don't need to beg. You don't need to burn everything down. You just need to stop standing in front of people who are meant to face themselves. Sometimes the strongest revenge is simply stepping aside and letting the truth do its work.